was a boy, when I was a young little boy, one of the things that I was most active and interested in and was baseball cards. At a very young age, I can remember my father taking me to New York, to the Bronx, to watch the New York Yankees play baseball. And I can remember my father coming home from work and meeting him at the train station as a little boy, and he would bring me a small packet of Topps baseball cards. This must have been 1956, 1957. I can remember going to school and in the first grade carrying a small wad of baseball cards in my pocket and raising my hand in the classroom and on key with another kid agree to meet him in the bathroom of my local elementary school and start scaling baseball cards and flipping baseball cards and coming back with big wads of baseball cards in my pocket, and then sometimes with nothing in my pocket. And at that time we were flipping Mickey Mantles, and we were flipping Roger Maris's, and we were flipping Jackie Robinson's, and we were flipping Duke Snider's, and we were flipping all our favorite New York area baseball cards. I'm sure many of us have some of those cards still either in their attic or they're now probably in their safe deposit box. We've got a terrific show today. We're going to talk about baseball cards. We're going to talk about Topps baseball cards. We're going to talk about everything that's going on and the fury and the excitement and it is probably one of the fastest growing collectibles today. My guest today is Norman Liss. Norman Liss is, for all intent and purposes, the chronicler, the historian, the spokesperson for Topps baseball cards. Norman, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Eric.
Thank you. You know, we were talking off the air, Norman, about, it was 1937 when Topps originated. There were four brothers who came up with the concept of Topps, and let's begin with share with the viewer how Topps started as a company, because it wasn't with baseball cards.
No, it wasn't. The company actually started when these four brothers, who were businessmen in Brooklyn, where the company still makes its corporate headquarters, decided that they wanted to go into a business. So they explored what the possibilities were. And they decided that they wanted a product that was consumable, that was brandable so that there would be some continuity between sales in the future, and a company in which there were only large competitors, big companies who were very good competitors, because that's what makes a good industry. And so they explored various types of commodities that could be sold. Interestingly, one of them was the produce business, putting brand names on products, fruits and vegetables. It was before the days, of course, of Andy Boy broccoli and Chiquita banana. They decided not to do that because that would mean that they'd have to get up very early in the morning to be at the markets. And then they came upon chewing gum, not bubble gum, but chewing gum. And they felt that there was a market for gum that was sold in individual 1-cent pieces. In those days, you could only buy gum in packets of 5 or 6 slices for a nickel. And so they tested it. They came up with a brand name called Topps with 2 P's in it, because that would be highly identifiable and would also have, because of the second P, a name that they could protect. And so they made up the wrappers, and they bought someone else's gum and wrapped them up and had stores where they could put them out. And they put them out on the counters where the cash registers were. They called them change makers. And they sold. So they decided to go into that business and set up their own manufacturing facilities. The pieces of gum that they went into business with were not sticks of gum, but the shorter pieces of gum, about half the size of a stick, sold for a penny, placed on the counters, and they were called Topps gum. And that's the product that they sold prior to World War II.
Now, the viewer knows, or many viewers know anyway, that there were baseball cards began to be manufactured in the early 1880s. I brought a card that I have from my collection. This is an 1887 baseball card. His name is Smith. He's a shortstop for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and maybe you could see this on the air, but he's fielding a ball with no glove. This was put out by Gold Coin Chewing Tobacco. Early on baseball cards were premiums. They were giveaways. if I'm correct.
That is correct. The original cards were put out with cigarettes starting in the 1880s, and many of them were drawings. In those days, the ball players were not paid for using their picture.
Right.
And some of them were taken in studio. Some of the very old cards are posed pictures with balls suspended in the air on a string.
Right.
And they were included in packs of cigarettes. And as you said, the actual use of bubble gum with baseball cards didn't start till the mid-30s when a company called Goody put them out for the first time.
The four brothers who put together the Topps Baseball Company, the name of the family is?
Shorin.
The Shorin family. So there was no concept really of baseball cards, in the evolving of Topps. In other words, this was something that came after the fact. What brought baseball cards and the bubble gum together, and as we know it today?
I'll bring you up to date on that. When World War II came along, when it was impossible to get sugar, and therefore there was a very limited supply of gum that could be made, of course the whole market had changed. Topps did produce gum that was used and chewed around the world, and they did get some allocations for that. But there was a slogan that some of your older viewers will probably know during World War II. It was said, "Don't talk, chum, chew Topps gum." And that was really a play on the slogan that appeared in factories, which said, "Loose lips sink ships." And this slogan was extensively advertised by Topps in national magazines, appeared in car cards, and was placed in factories just to encourage people not to talk about what they did in wartime activity. The illustrations for these ads were done by a cartoonist who was very popular. His name was Otto Soglo, and he did a comic strip, a nationally syndicated comic strip called The Little King. And some of your viewers, again, will remember that. After the war, Topps continued to produce Topps gum. And actually, its first bubblegum product, the Bazooka, didn't come along until the mid-40s. And that's when Topps decided to put out a bubblegum because the company saw that there was a market for it.
When Topps ventured into cards, they were really theme cards. There was the advent, I think it was synonymous with the advent with television also, as certain television personalities became well known, like a Hopalong Cassidy. It seemed like Topps created a series of over 200 scenes and put on 2 cards and sold with a stick of gum.
That's going on today, too. In addition, of course, Topps is known to a great many people as the company that makes the Topps baseball bubblegum cards. Equally known, of course, for its Bazooka brand. But Topps has many other cards that are not baseball cards.
Well, I sort of remember growing up, there were flag cards, there were presidential cards, there were, I guess, battleships and war-related, World War II, Korean War-related kinds of cards. They didn't capture my fancy as much as baseball cards did at the time. And it seemed like that particular, it was 1950, I believe, 1951, were the first baseball cards that were produced by Topps?
Yes, Topps came into baseball cards in 1951, and that was our first year. The cards were not what they are today. There were 2 sets of 52 cards. They're called the redbacks and the bluebacks. Okay. They were 52 cards because Topps visualized it as a game in which you would play cards with them. They were smaller than the cards of today. In 1952, Topps came up with the design which became the prototype for today's cards. The cards were larger than had been put out before, and the cards had the statistics on the back and the features on the back.
I might have one of those cards. Let me just see in my collection here of the few cards that I brought, if I have one of those 1952 cards. And I'm looking through here, and you know something? I'm not finding it. But it was a 1952 card, and that series of cards, Norman, that today is worth, if a collector has those cards, it's worth and valued at approximately $38,000, which 10 years ago, if one was to want to buy a complete set, for example, of those cards, they might have been able to buy it for $1,200 or $1,400. And what do you think it is that baseball cards have retained a certain amount of dollar value? I mean, Topps is really synonymous with Americana. Where's the value come in that has spiraled baseball cards to their values today?
Well, the value of a card is of course based upon certain factors: rarity, condition, and how much people want to pay for it. So the intrinsic basic value of the card, it's if you look at it carefully, you'll see that it's a piece of cardboard that's printed on two sides.
Now, a lot of people they can't believe it. I mean, here is something that's reproduced. This isn't a Salvador Dali. This isn't a Pablo Picasso. This is a reproduced piece of art or artwork. And then in 1952, to stay with that set, probably one of the most valuable cards or contemporary valuable cards is a Mickey Mantle 1952 baseball.
Good reason for that. There is a good reason
and
for it.
What is that? It's valued anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 in mint condition today.
In those days, this was Topps' real first big year in putting out cards. The entire series of cards today put out, all 792 cards, are available right from the very beginning of the year.
Okay.
In those days, Topps put out a small set of 100-odd cards in that first series. They sold very well, and Topps realized that it should put out a second series. So it started the process and put together a second series. By the time Topps was able to generate the manufacture of those cards and get them into distribution, it was late in the season and the interest wasn't as high. So Topps had a lot of cards left over. Included in that second series was the Mickey Mantle card. This was the first Mickey Mantle card that Topps had put out. Topps did not keep its old cards. Its method was to burn them up in an incinerator. However, the incinerator was not working, so they were loaded on a barge and taken out into the Atlantic Ocean and dumped. And so there are a lot of Mickey Mantles lying there at the bottom of the ocean, and maybe someday someone will go down and find a soggy Mickey Mantle down there.
Or there must be some fish collector out there, probably in the bottom of the ocean, who probably has that Mickey Mantle card stashed away under a rock somewhere. 1953, Topps departed from their 52 card, and that they had portrait painters who painted portraits of baseball players. Here is a series of 1953 Topps baseball cards. Over here, where my finger is pointing, we have a Jackie Roosevelt Robinson baseball card, and this was number 1 in the series. We have an Eddie Walter Lopat baseball card, which is right here. We have Dominic Paul DiMaggio, who is the brother of Joe DiMaggio and played for the Boston Red Sox for many years. We have Roy Campanella, who was an all-star catcher for many years with the old Brooklyn Dodgers. And we have Lawrence Peter Berra, who was also the longtime catcher for the New York Yankees. And this, if the viewer can see these clearly, these are really beautiful portraits that were done by, as you were saying to me off the air, unknown artists today.
That's correct. The people who did these were portrait artists who worked very, very fast. They worked from photographs that Topps obtained from the wire services, and sometimes they do as many as 2 in one day. They were people who were paid very, very little money for those paintings, and many of them are no longer alive, and we cannot identify who did which of the portraits. There were several people doing them.
And the work was really beautiful. I mean, I really think that the cards that Topps were manufacturing were, again, really Americana. I mean, as the decade of the 80s leaves us and we're on the dawn of a new decade, 1990s, we're going to jump ahead a little bit for the moment here, but continuously came up with new concepts, new ideas with baseball cards. In 1956, they made a horizontal card.
It's basically it has always been the concept of the company in its baseball cards, in its non-sports cards, and in all of the other products. Our basic market is children from the ages of 7 to 13.
Okay.
And in order to provide materials to satisfy that market, a company must be innovative, must come up with new ideas. There has to be a combination of new ideas, new concepts, but reality. You have to know not only what children are interested in, but you'll have to know what they will be interested in the months ahead, because there is a lead time in preparing the cards.
Did Topps, the brothers, or the organization, the company, have any idea early on when they did venture into baseball cards that would be as big a hit as it is today? Or, I mean, through the 50s and the 60s? I mean, was this a surprise to them? I mean, because as you said, they thematically produced other material, other cards, you know, as we indicated earlier. So, and baseball cards seem to have been the single largest production item, along with the gum, of course, you know, for Topps.
I think that the entire concept of the company, from the original four brothers and the people who are running the company now, the chairman of Topps, Arthur Sharon, is the son of one of the founders. And so there have been family members involved for many years with the company. They are a remarkable family in terms of their ability to know what the market wants, to speak in business terms, and to meet the needs at the time that it develops.
1964, for example, is a perfect example of that. The Beatles. I mean, pre-Ed Sullivan, Topps was already in the producing and creating Beatle cards.
That's correct. We do sell in many countries around the world, and through our contacts in England, we were aware that this group, this phenomenal group, was catching the attention of a lot of people. People in the United States did not know that. So before anybody else could obtain the rights to do cards on them, we had the rights. And so when they appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show and hit this country with a tremendous roar, Topps was ready, and Topps had the cards. I had a very interesting experience with that. We decided one day that we would get across to the public the fact that Beatles cards existed. So we dressed up 4 young men in Beatle wigs and stood in front of a school on 42nd Street and 3rd Avenue in New York to hand out cards. We did not realize what would happen. The first thing that happened was that we were completely surrounded by the youngsters who weren't quite sure whether they were the real Beatles or not. And the second thing that happened is that 4 plainclothes policemen emerged from the crowd and wanted to arrest us for obstructing traffic. So that was quite an
Were you one of those
experience.
4 men?
I was not one of the 4 men, but I was on the side with our photographer, and I just asked the policeman to give me another minute so I could get some more pictures.
One of the things today, let's progress to 1989 again, is when I was a boy, I was able to buy baseball cards in my local candy store.
You still can.
And you still can, the local stationery stores.
And convenience stores, and in drugstores, and in supermarkets.
Right.
And actually everywhere that children and their parents go, because parents do buy a lot of cards for their kids, and they still are sold in enormous numbers. When you realize that we sell every year well over 1 billion baseball cards, you realize that there are a lot of people who are buying them in the packets with the cards and with the bubble gum. And Topps is a tradition. One of the things that's happening today is that the fathers of today, who constantly say, "I wish my mother hadn't thrown out my baseball cards," are not going to let it happen to their sons and daughters. So what's happening is that it has become a father and son hobby. And the fathers and the sons are buying and collecting and putting them into plastic sleeves, as yours are. and saving them together and looking at the price guides, and maybe today's youngsters are cutting their teeth on economics and stowing away some of these cards to help pay for their college education. And the financial whizzes of tomorrow may just be learning on Topps bubblegum cards today.
Well, there's certainly a lot of economics that goes along, as you say, with baseball cards. My family moved 10 years ago, Norman, from Westchester County to Fairfield. And it was the day of the move, and my father was able to reach me at work, and he said to me, "Your mother is throwing out all your shoe boxes full of baseball cards. They are going on the sidewalk. We're out of the house at the end of the day today. If you want them, there's no more time." So I thought about it for a moment or two. Do I really want these? Do I really need these? I mean, I had these when I was a kid. Make a long story short, obviously, I shot home. I went up to the attic. I found all of those shoe boxes full of baseball cards, and that's literally how they were. They were not put in plastic sleeves at the time. They were lined up. They had rubber bands around them. They were by teams, or they were just in a big box strewn all over the place. And it was at that time that I procured the cards from my attic, and I took them back home that evening, and I'm looking at them and I'm reminiscing over some cards. Like, there's a Don Mossy baseball card, and Don Mossy had real big ears like that. He was a funny baseball card. I like the Don Mossy baseball card. There was Ted Kluszewski baseball cards, and Ted Kluszewski, his 1957 card, for some of you who might remember that, had his sleeve cut up to here, and you saw these big, bulging muscles, and this little toothpick up a bat. And then there were other players, where we have our own favorite stories about different players for different reasons. So as I'm reminiscing and I'm going through all of this, I said, geez, there's got to be a value. There's got to be some kind of a guide, some kind of a book, some kind of a guideline that will give me what the current value of these cards are. So I went to my local bookstore and I asked for such a book, and I came up with such a book. And this was one of the first books, I believe. This is the 11th edition. So this is 1979. This is the Beckett Guide, I believe. Am I correct in saying that?
Dr. Jim Beckett is a statistician who started, he's in Texas, and many years ago, to really become the guru of price values. And so his books are referred to very extensively, and they are really not only a price value directory, but they also give you a wonderful history of baseball cards.
So as I went and purchased such a similar book many years ago, and I looked up the value of a card. Well, let's show the viewer another card here. This is a 1953 Topps Mickey Charles Mantle. On the 53 cards they used all the middle names, it seemed. And if I could read the back of the, well, at this time, this has his lifetime statistics through 1952, and his collective home runs, at this point in his career, was 36 home runs. Now, at that particular time, who really would have known that Mickey Mantle would become probably the most sought after, the most collected, and probably one of the most prized baseball cards to collect today? I'm going to read off the back of this card because many of you probably have not seen this card before, but it does say, many baseball experts say that switch-hitting Mickey is the greatest baseball prospect they've ever seen. He certainly showed why in 1952, finishing second in the American League in doubles and slugging percentage. In 52, Mickey also set a new Yankee record and led the league with 111 strikeouts. He broke in as a shortstop in 1949, hit .383 in Joplin in 1950, and split the 51 season between the Yankees and Kansas City. Now, Kansas City was a Yankee minor league farm team. It was not Kansas City, the major league team. And this is all, of course, on a Topps baseball card. And when I looked at the time at the value of that card, which I had since a child, at the time it had a value of approximately a couple of $100, which was a lot of money. I mean, for something that's a piece of cardboard, Norman, and 10, 11 years ago, to see that the guide on that was almost a couple $100. And today, as we speak, the guide on this card is $1,900. it's fascinating how there's been such an escalation in the prices of Topps baseball cards, and also pre-Topps baseball cards for that matter. Did you have any idea at the time in your longevity with Topps that this phenomena would spiral and escalate as it has?
It never occurred to me.
Never occurred to you. Now, Norman doesn't have a baseball card collection. Here he is, a gentleman who is the spokesman for Topps, who when I called on the phone, excuse me, and so graciously said he would come on the show with me. I said, well, Norman, you must have an incredible collection of cards, and never having met this man, but only had a phone conversation, and he said, no, my heart kind of sunk a little bit. I thought possibly I'd be getting some gifts today, and the cameraman and other members of the staff would be getting 52 and 53 Topps baseball cards from Norman Liss, but that's not the case today. In summing up today's show, what's in the future for Topps going forward to a new decade of the 1990s? Can you give any hints or even what a 1990 baseball card might look like for the viewer as we're closing up today's show?
Well, first of all, I can tell you that the 1990 cards are well into production, and it is a year-round process. The card itself will have a very colorful, decorative border. There will be 792 cards again this year.
Okay.
And the cards will be out just about the first of the year.
Any new surprises and any new subsets or anything like that for the viewer, maybe, that you could drop a little hint on us?
One of the nice things about Topps is we never tell anybody what we're going to do.
Not even me? Come on, Norman.
Well, I will tell you that they will have what Topps cards have always had, and that's innovation, great design, and they will be in very, very wide distribution.
For Norman Liss, and for myself, Eric Newland, I thank you for being here today. For those of you who might not have been up in your attic in many, many years, maybe this is a time to scamper upstairs, go through those shoe boxes that still might be there, dust them off, open up the boxes and see what's there. It's an exciting collectible baseball cards today. And Topps, one of the innovators and one of the originators of baseball cards, as we know them today, is exciting. For myself, Eric Newland, and for Norman Liss, I thank you for being here, Norman, and until next week.